As the war in Syria comes to an end, regional and international players seem to be switching sides. For instance, Israel. As the war raged on, Tel Aviv only had one thing to say when it came to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad: that he must go. Back in 2016, Israel's military affairs minister, Avigdor Lieberman, called Assad a butcher and a monster. It seems that has changed now. Lieberman now says with President Assad back in full control of the country, Israel is less concerned.
It is pretty interesting and a bit bizarre how Israel has done a complete about-face, a total 180 when it comes to having really started this proxy war, which they refer to as a civil war, of course. But I think the underlying point is that they lost. Israel, the U.S., the West, NATO, all that, they lost.
Israel has been an active participant in the proxy war in Syria since the beginning. Syria's Golan Heights has been under the occupation of Israeli forces since 1967. With no intentions of returning the plateau to the Syrians, the Israelis consider the Golan Heights theirs, without international recognition. And it is on the Golan border where tensions have flared between the two sides during the war. Israel says it wants Syrian forces and their allies away from the territory.
Iran and Hezbollah, which is, of course, an ally of Iran, are staunch allies, the biggest allies that Syria has ever had. And so to say that, there can only be peace if Iran does X, Y, and Z. And, understandably, Assad is a little bit chafing at that, saying, wait a minute, you know what? They helped us keep our country intact. They'll stay where and when on our territory as long as and to the extent that we want.
Playing the role of a mediator, the Russians say they've negotiated that Iranian personnel helping the Syrian government will withdraw to a distance from the occupied Golan Heights. Israel says that's not enough. An Israeli minister has said that Tel Aviv does not want a new Hezbollah on the Syrian border.
They say they want one thing, then they get what they want, and then they pull back, and they want more. It's like, look, you said you wanted Iran to pull away from the border with the Golan, which are occupied, which are not Israeli territory, and which belong to Syria by right, but fine. We'll do what you want. We got the Iranians to agree. We got Assad to agree. And then, boom, that's no good. It's just typical of the complete lack of integrity and honesty with which Israel, the U.S., and the West conducts these so-called negotiations and diplomatic relations in general.
The Russian ambassador to Israel has gone on record and said that Moscow cannot force its will on Damascus when it comes to choosing who can stay on Syrian soil.